welcome. Hey. How you guys? Earlier, but we brought the sunshine with us today, right? Yeah. We brought the sunshine with us.
Welcome to the show.
Bill has actually been to Bookends twice before for Category 7 and Frozen Fire. Dry Ice literally hit the shelves today, so you're the first people to have it. This is his first signing, to the best of my knowledge. And for those of you that purchased the book, Bill also has one of these fancy photos of himself. We're happy to sign for you. But thank you, Bill, for coming back to Bookends, and appreciate you doing what you're doing.
Thank you. You guys are great. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. How's everybody?
Good.
Who's here with my Facebook page? Oh, nice. Who's here with the Twitter page? Oh, that's good. How are you? Jeez, thanks for coming. I didn't prepare anything to say. I did like my first one, Category 7. I kind of like. It was about a hurricane hitting New York City. You know, if you ever read my first book, Category 7 was a bestseller, and then Frozen Fire. And so I want to thank you and Pat so much because you sold a lot of books, which my 4 children thank you. They can now have part of their college education finance. But Frozen Fire and like that book, Category 7, Dry Ice. It's a weather techno thriller book. It's a book. All my books are actually geared toward the majority of this audience, which are women, which is good, which I like. You know, and I started that premise out of my very first book when I wrote Category 7. You know, since there's been so many changes in the way you read a book nowadays. You know, so when I started writing my first book, I looked at my wife, who was an avid reader, and I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to work. So my wife comes to bed at midnight, and she would read her book, and she had this searchlight. Well, that's what I thought it was. This book light she had on her head to read her book, and it was like from Stalag 13. You know, just this light would come on at midnight, and I would be like, oh my God, look, the room's lit up. And she was reading her book. But she was an avid reader, and she still is, and she reads every night. Now she reads a Nook. But it's back then, you know, so... which is the greatest advent for those of you that have to get up early and you have a spouse that reads. So, but, you know, seeing that what an avid reader she was, I was like, I got to gear books toward women because women read a lot of books, and then they pass this on to the husband or the boyfriend or the kids or whatever. And so I write about weather. There's passion in the books. The first book that I wrote, Category 7, didn't have any of that in it. And my mother-in-law, of all people, comes to me and says, you know, you don't have any of that in your book. It's my mother. I said, well, I didn't want anybody to think the weatherman was like, you know, this passion freak or something. And so she said, well, you know, that's what little old ladies like in these books. And I said, well, we'll try to work that out. So I almost had to hire somebody to write that. So we pulled out of Frozen Fire. There's some romance in Dry Ice. Dry Ice is not a heavy weather book, so for you ladies that read this book, you think, you say weather, techno, thriller, okay, it's going to be about how a barometer works. It's not. It's a book about it's a book about people and about what humans can do to one another. There's an outstanding protagonist in the book. There's an outstanding antagonist in the book. And so mostly where I derive my ideas for books from comes from the news accounts, news stories, stuff on the web. I look at those things. I'm a news person. I'm a weather person. I look at data. I'm a weather geek. And so I got to reading books about Nikola Tesla, and who is probably the most underrated inventor ever. And it just happened to be today. I went down to Barnes & Noble on 5th Avenue, and I looked up, and where did I find myself standing? I thought, God put me here for this one moment. I was standing on Nikola Tesla Corner, just totally by accident in Manhattan. Does anybody know where that is? Nikola Tesla Corner in Manhattan. It's 40th Street and 6th Avenue at the corner of Bryant Park. he used to hang out there and feed the pigeons. And he took care of sick pigeons, and his lab was down at 38th Street. And he actually blew up his own lab. But he was an amazing inventor. He invented radio. He invented our remote control that we use today, invented by Nikola Tesla. He invented the Tesla coil used in all radio transmitters. He invented a lot of things. He invented oscillators that we use in hospitals for health equipment, all the blood transfusion oscillators. He helped Roentgen with the X-ray machine. But he also invented a way that you could influence weather. And he figured it out in 1900. And he figured out that you could use the ionosphere of the Earth, the North Pole, the South Pole, the Aurora Borealis, use low-frequency electromagnetic waves, and you could affect lots of things on the planet. You could actually fry the instrumentation of an airplane that happened to be flying in there. You could have fried the instrumentation of the space shuttle. You could create holes in the atmosphere, low-pressure holes in the atmosphere that eventually would come down to the Earth and affect weather. There's an antenna array like this right now in the United States. It's in Gakona, Alaska. It's called the HARP program. And it's an antenna array. It's about 150 miles north of Fairbanks, Alaska. And it's a huge antenna array that uses low-frequency radio waves, and the University of Alaska uses it and does research. And so it's loosely, my book is basically based on that antenna array and how you could make weather using that. And the Russians believe that this is our Star Wars defense program. You could actually use low-frequency radio waves, create a heated hole in the ionosphere, and drop those infantry satellites or missiles or things like that out of the sky. So with that in mind, I wrote this book where an agricultural company called Flint Agrochemical wants to be able to use an antenna array to create weather around the Earth, to make it rain in arid places like Somalia, make it rain in places like Pakistan, create sunshine in other places, grow crops, feed the world. But as I just told you, not only can you use it for good, but you can also use it as a weapon. And there are forces at work that would like to use it as a weapon against other countries, keep other countries suppressed while other countries remain rather strong. So that's where that protagonist, antagonist comes into the book. There's a lady in the book named Test. She's the heroine of our book. She figures out what's going on at the agrochemical antenna array, which is based in Antarctica. I did not go there and study Antarctica, write this book. I wanted to, but with work and 4 kids and a wife and all that, my wife would have killed me if I went there. So I would still be no reason to come home. So that's really the basis of the book. It's a beach read. It's a lot of fun to read. It goes by really quick. My wife, who is the toughest person in the world when it comes to reading books, likes the book, which I'm really happy about. Because if I can get it by her, then I know that's going to be a good book. The critics liked it, so they wrote nice things about it. And so I hope you will like it. So since I'm a weather guy and it's my job, I can answer any weather questions you have. Anything at all. I can help you with homework for the future. I always get asked homework questions. So any question at all, I'll be glad to answer.
This has been a tough year in weather in the United States and around the world too.
Yeah.
Are we going to see this continuing, or is this a
Yeah,
anomaly?
because there's somebody who built an antenna array in Antarctica. You know, it's been a very interesting year of weather, and you know, the planet is always changing, and that's why I always tell people, when I hear somebody talk about the fragile environment of the Earth. Ask all those people in Texas and Oklahoma and Missouri whose crops have burnt to the ground and they haven't had water for 9 days, how fragile this earth is. Ask those people in Japan about that tsunami that wrecked their country, how fragile the earth is. The earth is not fragile at all. The earth is growing, expanding, changing all the time. I mean, I see it. I'm a scientist. I'm watching it every day. And the earth is wonderful. It is just growing. It's an amazing place to watch. The more I study science and the weather, the less I realize I know. And in the last couple of years, the weather has changed to a point to where we use a lot of computer models in forecasting the weather. And every storm that we see, and we see every storm, and we see a storm coming, but every storm has been an overachievement. I mean, if you want to go back and just take Sunday, for instance. I wrote washout on the map on Thursday on my 5-day forecast. I should have put build an ark, but it just looked like 3-4 inches of rain. It was 10. So every storm this past couple of years has been an overachiever. I mean, we had snowstorms where we were going 8, 12, 14, 16 inches of snow, and I'm standing there going, man, that's 14, 16 inches of snow. We're on the high end of that, and it turns out 24. So our computer models, the government computer models, even the European computer models, the Japanese have them, the French have them, the Chinese have them. All their computer models and our models too are on the low end right now because the planet is changing and growing and things are moving around. So the way our computer models work is they have algorithms in them, they have mathematical equations in them, and those are going to have to be tweaked. I mean, it's just a fact. I mean, if I would have went on television on Thursday and told you Sunday there's going to be 10 inches of rain at Lido Beach, I would have had some guy from Brooklyn call me. So like, Bill, have you had your head examined? And I would have examined my own head. So I mean, that's why I love being in the weather business, because we have all these computers, we have all these computer models, and weather is the last frontier that none of this. Well, I mean, the technology does, but it's the last frontier where all the technology does not completely have its arms wrapped around how weather is. And that's what's exciting about it, I think. And I always tell people, when they say, well, if there's a chance of rain this weekend, I just tell them, rent the tent.
Bill, I have a question. With the 10 inches of rain that we received, if it were snow?
That'd be 100 inches of snow. Even more than that, probably. I mean, the way we figure snow, 1 inch of liquid makes 10 inches of snow at 32 degrees. So if you drop that temperature and it's colder, obviously it would make more snow. So sometimes we call it a 10 to 1 ratio. 1 inch of liquid equals 10 inches of snow. Sometimes if it's cold enough, that ratio goes to 15 to 1. So if you had 10 inches of rain, you would have had 15 inches, 15 times 10, 150 inches of snow. Right?
I see.
But still, here's the equation I tell people. I tell people, when I wrote Category 7, it was because every 70 years, a major hurricane hits this area, and the last one was in 1938. So if you add the 70 years, obviously we're beyond that now. So we're ready for we're in the mix for a Category 3 hurricane. But you can shovel, 24, 36 inches of snow. You cannot shovel the ocean. I mean, as we saw with all this rain, you got basements, sump pumps, and, look at that, all that rain that was made by that system, and that wasn't a tropical storm. That wasn't a hurricane. And we got 10 inches of rain. And look at all of it.
What was Floyd? Hurricane
Floyd was a tropical depression. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, I remember.
What? I'm sorry.
I remember. My parents live they live where Anthony Johnson hosts every time the Passaic River floods in Liverpool.
Oh, that's a good spot.
They're in there. My mother jokes she's bringing him coffee.
Money shot.
My mother brings him coffee.
Yeah, well, the Passaic River does this.
Yeah, and they live on one of those.
And then and it's 6, 8 feet deep. All you got to be is one of those bins. I mean, they really need to take the core, they need to dredge it, and they need to do all these things that they need to do. They didn't need to build it in the first place, but they did, and now you got to fix that. But
I remember they flooded with Floyd.
What happens for us is this: it wasn't just one storm. There had been a bunch of small little low pressure storms that had rained prior to that, and then there was a tropical depression before that. And so that had, just like it is today, everything's full right now. So if we were to have a tropical depression come along now, it would
Anthony be having coffee with my mother.
yeah, I mean, they just go ahead and just get out. Just go ahead and die.
What's the most dangerous weather situation you've found yourself in?
Well, I would say definitely, storm system like that provides flow. I mean, there's just nothing you can do. I mean, if you looked at that Bound Brook situation, those poor people, early in the morning, we had our chopper there at sunrise, and gas lines break and there's fires. These people were standing on the roofs of buildings, their homes, their businesses, because they were flooded out. There's nothing worse than like a nor'easter with a tremendous amount of rain. Tropical depression, tropical storm is the absolute worst. I think of your winter storms. If you get a nor'easter that produces ice, snow, and rain, the 3. If you get just a beautiful blizzard, it's white, it's fluffy, you can drive on that, you can live with that, you can shovel that. But once you start mixing in the other forms of precipitation, ice and rain, but flooding is the worst because there's nothing you can do. You just have to leave. And sometimes in some of these areas where we live, it's tight here in New Jersey. It's the worst area I've seen geographically. Because, as I mentioned, streams and creeks and rivers and things are shallow. You don't have a giant river that can handle all the runoff. You have a lot of little creeks and streams and things that fill up very quickly. So storm upon storm upon storm, then you have a massive flooding issue. And so that's the hardest part. What made me become a meteorologist was I lived through Hurricane Camille when I was 9 years old. In our home, we had to put our refrigerator freezer behind the front door to keep our home from blowing. Now imagine being 9 years old. I mean, you're horrified. And so there were 170 people killed, 70 were washed out on the Gulf of Mexico and were never found. This was in 1969, before they invented the Saffir-Simpson scale, so you didn't have a hurricane rating. It's the reason why we have a hurricane scale. That hurricane had 240 mile-per-hour winds. The wall of water was 30 feet high. That would go up about 4 stories on a building. So it immediately just washed away everything in its path. So flooding and storms of that nature are really the worst. When you have flood potential, there's nothing you can do to save yourself.
So you first became interested when you were
Was
pretty
9.
young?
Yeah, I was 9.
Elementary.
And I lived with I grew up with my grandparents, and they were farmers. And my grandpa was not only a farmer, but he was a pastor. So we had a lot of praying for rain in our house. And so there was a lot of that, because we raised crops for a living, and we had tomatoes and corn and all that sort of stuff. And so that's why I left home at 17 and became a weatherman. It's not going to work on a farm. That's work. Yes.
Well, your day's off, and you're trying to relax and get some downtime, and then there's this big major snowstorm or big storm that's coming. Do you have like all the computers and stuff in like your home office to
Yes.
get right on it, and it's like, okay guys, that's it. Now, do you get like on call for work when it comes to that major?
Yes.
Okay.
A couple of things happen. Particularly snowstorm season, it's like we're on call all the time. I'll go in on weekends. If you see a storm coming, I'll go in on Friday, stay in a hotel, and work the weekend with the meteorologists. If it's just one isolated storm, and it depends on the intensity. If it's 5 or 6 or 8 inches, I'll stay home. And I'll do PLJ radio and XM satellite. And, I do WGCH in Greenwich, and if it affects sports or something, I do it for ESP radio, stuff like that. I do it from home. But what I'll do is I'll do the cut-ins in my den, and then I have a door on my den that goes right out to the backyard. I run out in the backyard and play with the kids, and then run back in and do another cut-in, and then run back out in the yard, play in the snow, and then run back in and see what's going on with the weather. But with thunderstorms, from home, I'm pretty much locked in on the computer. It's a public service job.
Right.
I mean, it really is. And I explain that to my interns. I've never had an intern that didn't think that way. I always tell them, when you come to this job, it's a public service job, and you're working for the public, and we're working for you. And if you don't have that mindset, if you want to be a star, we're right on Columbus Avenue, and Broadway's right next to that. Broadway's right there, head south. If you want to be a star, because and over time, we build trust in our weather department. Because when I got there, we didn't have much of a weather department at all in 1988. We didn't have much of. You ever been to Stormfield? And his dad Frank, it was on Channel 4, and so we didn't have. As a matter of fact, when I came there. I came from Dallas, Texas, where we had Doppler radars, we had all that stuff. So when I came to New York City, I thought, they're going to have even better equipment. I went into Channel 7, and all they needed was just equipment. They had the right philosophy, they had great managers, it was a wonderful place to work. We just needed weather equipment. And so I go in there and I ask, they didn't have a radar that worked with the computer. And they said, we bought this radar, we bought this computer, the two couldn't talk to each other. And so we sat down and we figured out what we needed. We got great equipment. And We have great staff now. We have four great, well, there's three great meteorologists and there's me. We have a great staff of four, and we have great philosophy. I work for a great company that believes in weather. We do weather first. When it's bad, we leave the top of the newscast. We come in, we go on 7online.com, we go on the internet. We're on everything. And some of the television is the least, sometimes the least that I do. We have our website, we go on Facebook, Twitter, 7online.com. We record stuff immediately, put it on our website, so you can get it when you want. You can get it on your phone, 7go.com,
well, like you were
on all
saying.
those platforms. iBook, iPad, iThing, we're on the Droid, we're on BlackBerry. I mean, you can get us at 7go.com on every platform. So you can get it when you want it, you can get it when you need it. And we do attachment heads, we do screens in the Javits Center around Manhattan. So we're constantly. It's okay. It's okay.
It doesn't happen
Come
on
on,
TV.
that looks good right there.
I was holding it back.
Anybody else?
All right.
Last question?
Yeah.
You ever catch any heat for being, well, not wrong, but off a little bit?
Oh, this is I get heat when it's right. My favorite is, well, the two of my favorites are for mom to call me, send me an email that says, I really need your help. I'm desperate. My daughter is getting married. Would you please tell me the weather for June the 10th, 2017. That's my favorite. My second favorite is to walk by a construction site in New York City in January or February when these guys are hanging iron and it's 20 degrees, the wind chill is 0, and the snow's blowing sideways, and somebody will yell from 20 stories up, "Hey, idiot weatherman! You stink!" Everybody walking along the sidewalks looking at me, I'm kind of like, yeah. That's my favorite. In New York, even people on a perfectly sunny day will look at you and go, "Well, you screwed this up." That's part of it, and I like that part of the job. I don't mind. I like the challenge. So.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, we're going on vacation. So last week of August is the Outer Banks, so we're gonna get
Oh, good luck with that. Hurricane season.
My more vote, Shirley. You need more
That
vote.
is right in the you're right in the pipeline. You know, just evacuate, come back, evacuate, come back. For those, that's last 2 weeks of August, first 2 weeks of September.
I know.
You know. But I mean, there's two ways to look at that hurricane season. We haven't had any so far, but 15 years. Then we're already G in the alphabet, and there hasn't been anything very very major. Nothing has made landfall, except for like Mexico. But remember, 15 years ago there was only one storm. It was the A on the alphabet, and that was Andrew. So keep that alphabet in mind. It'd be just the A one, it'd be a big category 5.
I work for an insurance company, I remember that.
So you have flood insurance. Yeah, that's a premium.
Forecasting out, you got to see 5-day forecast. How much harder is it? You go to 6 days. You go to
Beyond
7
that?
days. Yeah, beyond that.
Well, depending upon the time of the year, we're better than other times. I hope that makes sense. But fall and spring are very volatile times of the year. Beyond 5 days, sometimes beyond three days in spring and fall because the weather systems move very fast. Timing becomes an issue. In the depth of winter, in the depth of summer, when the weather slows down a bit, we're very good 5 days out. I don't really care we don't do a 7-day forecast. So we're one of the few people who do not do a 7-day forecast. Lee and Jeff and Lee and I really, years ago, I had a sit-down philosophy that we were happy with 5 days, and then 7 was just too far. And so what we do try to do, though, is on Tuesdays and Wednesdays is include the weekend in the summertime, because that's what people are looking for. And so we'll go out that far and say, hey, there could be a chance of a storm here, or there could be this or that. But those forecasts are much better than they were. When I started, back in the Truman administration, you just had it, you put out a 5-day forecast and said Tuesday through Sunday, chance of a storm. You know, you do that these days, you know, you're not going to last very long doing weather. So it has gotten a lot better, you know, in the scope of things. We have computer models that go out 15 days. We have computer models that go out 120 days. So, and there are a lot of weather jobs. So, I mean, if you've got kids, So, not behind a microphone in front of the camera. I mean, I've had students who now work on Wall Street, forecasting for Wall Street firms, commodities firms, there's private meteorology, applied meteorology. There are lots of jobs where weather is just taken off in the job. You know, not so much, you know, in broadcast music, but in everything else. Oil futures contracts, energy contracts, corn, soybeans, cocoa, all this is determined by weather. It's 1/3 of our, 1/3 of our gross national domestic product is based on weather. So it is a lot. It's true. So when you sign books, and you get a picture, so it's a value-added night. That's what we say in the TV business. And say,
Actually, yeah, the book is free, the picture is $24.99.
And Nico, and I see it. Yeah. Where we go and
It starts here.
Dante, you want a picture?
sure, come back here.
pick your hat up. Oh, yeah, I know where it's. I don't know where you're
I want to know.
I know you know. Matthew?
Yeah, that
Matthew.
There we go. We'll do the audience.
Dante, you have to take 20 minutes.
There you go. Where's Blair tonight?
Sure.
It is off.
Hey, Dante, don't forget this. Don't forget that.
You don't even know. More than I think I waited to meet you. My friends think
Thank
I'm
you.
not.
You get a picture too.
Think I'm not.
Like I said, value added. McConaughey not under sanitation.
That's right.
That's a lot of pressure here.
Better draw more pictures on there.
Bucket list. The die sign in his books.
I'm so excited. We're going to touch you.
That's okay.
It's all
So
part of the job.
I won't melt, I won't break. How about this? I can scratch that. Well, you're gonna. This book is in the same style. I killed my daughter in the second chair. Well, I used her name.
Yeah,
She's my oldest
you always
daughter.
had to get
I
out.
said, Maggie, I killed you the second chapter. 16.
That's a popular thing.
Yeah. Oh, she's like, I'm all stoked by that. I was like, let's see, Barbara also? Also, you got
That's a trilogy.
the holy, trifecta.
You can put this on the dresser.
This will keep the cockroaches out of your kids. Works magic. I'll be back in February.
Yeah.
February, the week of February 1st.
We didn't mention it.
Oh, that's right, yeah. I'm back February 1st.
Oh, is that the one? That was
Publishers.
No, I know, I'm just
It's just
saying.
taking forever.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of got
Twenty of us,
the
and
economy, the publisher reorg. The book got put on the back burner, and so now it's for sure. The book's done. So the pictures are done, the graphics are done. The book is awesome for kids. And then my next novel, that's done.
Oh, wow, really?
I wrote it by myself without a co-author. It's complete sentences.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. See you on Facebook.
So I'm just kind of, it's a little, I had to sleep for 6 weeks. That's right. People started sending them in, so I started wearing them. The people from the Nets called, the nicks, and they're like, okay, I'll wear them. I already had rotator cuff surgery. I was doing push-ups with a ball, a medicine ball to the side, and it all popped out. And so I didn't have anything done to it for 2 years, and it kept getting worse and tearing worse and worse and worse and worse. So we got bursitis, arthritis, they took out the bursa, labrum, stomachs, all of that was messed up, and even the biceps.
It's quite a workout.
2.5 hours in surgery.
Right around here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll do the office first. Thank you very much. It's nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.